Now, let's move on to housing, because it is wonderful, of course, to be able to buy your own home, but these days, with new builds, they're often sold actually as leaseholds, which can lead to many, many problems down the line. So let's get more on this. Let's talk to Katie Kendrick. She's the founder of the National Leasehold Campaign, and MP Just Matters, who represents Ellesmere Port and Neaston, who is in the studio. First of all, Katie, let's start with you. Just explain to us what the complications, what the problems are potentially when you go to buy a house and it turns out actually it's a leasehold.
Hi Darren. Yeah, so I bought a leasehold property in Ellesmere Port in 2014. Didn't think there was any problems with it. Got told I could buy the freehold after 2 years, which I fully intended to do. Unknown to me, the freehold was sold from beneath me to a third-party investor, and then everything changed.
And when you say everything changed, in what way?
The process to buy my freehold back was not as simple as what the developer told me. It was no longer £2,000 to £4,000. It was now £13,000. My next door neighbours, theirs had gone from £4,000 to £30,000. You know, the price for permissions. So I wanted to put an extension on my property. The permission fee had gone from £300 to £2,600 to put a small extension on my property because I didn't own it.
And in saying that, though, many people will say, well, you knew it was a leasehold, didn't you? And you know, these things maybe ought to be expected. As in, would you like to see, I don't know, the changes in terms of kind of things being more obvious to people who are buying homes about those potential changes further down the line? Or that actually whoever takes over the leaseholds, whoever buys it up, cannot do things like this in terms of increasing fees by extortionate rates?
Right, let's look. There's categorically no reason why a standalone house should ever have been sold leasehold in the first place. It never used to be. All they've done is seen an opportunity to make an endless income stream from people's properties. They should never have been leasehold in the first place. So this situation should never have arisen for houses. Why did it? Because developers got greedy. They simply got greedy and they wanted to create a second asset on somebody's home. And that is fundamentally wrong.
OK, Katie, stay there for us, because let's bring in your local MP, Just Matters. Now, you've called this the PPI, I think, of the house building industry, haven't you, Justin? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, as with PPI, what we saw is that thousands of people across the country were basically missold their properties. Now, Katie knew that she was buying leasehold, but there are plenty of people who didn't even know that was what was happening. They didn't know that ground rents were going to double every 10 years, so that within a couple of decades they became thousands and thousands of pounds, which made the properties unsellable. So the Competition and Markets Authority have been investigating a number of the developers and have found that these companies have been guilty of mis-selling. So it was absolutely the right thing to call it. And as Katie says, there is absolutely no reason why any house should be sold on a leasehold basis. So
you're looking for it to be banned outright?
Yes, and we're making some slow progress there. The government have committed to looking into this. The Law Commission have done a report as well. It's slow progress, but actually it's a system that's been around for centuries, which has no place in the modern world, and nowhere else in the world actually has these kind of things on a property which people should own outright when they buy it, because there's no difference in the purchase price when they buy them in the first place. They're actually buying a house, but then all these other charges are hidden away. And as Katie says, it's used as an income stream for developers, when really actually they should be upfront and say, actually, you're going to buy the house and that's the end of our relationship.
Katie, back to you. How is the campaign going?
It's going really, really well. When we opened up the Pandora's box to do with leasehold houses, it's then stemmed over into leasehold flats. You know, we shouldn't have leasehold in this system. It's an abusive and it's a feudal system that needs to be abolished for houses and flats. Increase in service charge, cladding, unsafe buildings, you know, all of it comes down to everything stacked against leaseholders. They are the ones that ultimately pay the price, and it's those that have the least control. And this whole system is rotten to the core, and it really does need to go.
Justin, are the government listening to any of this?
Well, I think they're listening because people like Katie and the National Leasehold Campaign have forced them to sit up and take notice. They've been absolutely superb at bringing this to MPs' attention, and we've got support across the House, MPs and peers are all very interested in the leasehold reform. And as I say, there's been a Law Commission report on what to do to actually reform and abolish leasehold. It's just getting the government to actually introduce those measures now, which is what we all want to see.
And Katie, I suppose back to you just briefly on this. Just how big a problem is this? I know you've had your own personal experience. Do you have any idea in terms of numbers or percentages, how many people across the country are in a similar position?
Well, to do with leasehold houses, there's well over 1 million leasehold houses, which people still haven't had their penny drop moment, as this actually impacts on them until they actually try to sell their properties, and they can't get more. Buyers cannot get mortgages on a lot of these leasehold houses because they have onerous ground rents. If your ground rent is more than £250 a year outside of London, then it's really, really difficult to get a mortgage. But as I say, people don't realise this until they come to sell. Leasehold flats, we are going to be moving away to a much fairer system, which is called Commonhold. And I'm fortunate enough to sit on the government's Commonhold Council, and we are making slow but steady progress into moving towards a much fairer system that needs to happen.
Just explain to us, sorry, Kate, because, so what is a ground rent? So you bought your house essentially with a leasehold, and then you have to pay. What is a ground rent?
Ground rent is money for nothing. It doesn't provide a service. It literally is a money just to be able to sit on somebody else's land. It's an income that they get, and they increase it year on year on. And we go back to your previous guess about RPI. This is a massive issue for ground rents because a lot of ground rents don't double every 10 years. A lot of them are linked to RPI. If we see an RPI at 7%, that is going to cause huge problems for all of the leaseholders in this country, which is close to 5 million people.
Okay, and just very finally on that, I mean, as Katie was talking about, the inflation is a big part in all of this. This will be, and we were just talking about the cost of living crisis, weren't we? This will be an added problem, given the fact also interest rates are going up.
Yeah, well, obviously people who bought these houses will have mortgages as well. But the point Katie is making is that although the ground rent goes up, the freeholder, the person who gets the money, does absolutely nothing in return for it. It's a payment that they just get in perpetuity until the lease runs out for nothing in return. And that's why it's such a scandal, because it really is money for nothing. OK, Justin, thank you very much indeed. And Katie as well. That's Justin Madders, the MP for Asbury and Easton and our constituency. Katie Kendrick, who is the founder of the National Leasehold Campaign. Thank you so much both for joining us this afternoon.